clica no My Network, está lá no meio, Find Nearby. Find Nearby. Se você clicar o Find Nearby, ele vai, ou o Bluetooth, achar que ele está aqui, vocês já podem conectar e botar o nome de vocês. Isso é muito usado na América do Norte. Em vez de ter cartão, você vai lá. Então, Felipe, Jeffrey, o Andrew, Lorna, Maurício, o Denilson, todo mundo já me conhece, já está no meu grupo. Mas é uma boa maneira de vocês também pegarem os contatos e um outro pitch aí de como a tecnologia ajuda a gente no dia a dia, tá? Legal, né? Então vamos lá. Okay. So we're live on the YouTube and on the Facebook. So I would like first to ask Andrea Mansano from the Chamber of Commerce to please come up. Andrew Larimer from Datamar, please to come up. And Fabricio from CNI, National Industry Confederation, to please to come up, please also. This morning, gentlemen, it's our second webinar. It's basically focusing with Andrea, showing us the platform where the Chamber has. It's free and it's public, where you can, through the commodity, the HS code or the NCM number, filter very interesting information both from Canada to Brazil, from Brazil to Canada, okay? And then Andrew, who works for Datamar, has a very interesting statistics produced by the Manifest of Shipping Lines, Container and Break Bulk, which can give you a real live perspective of the trade based in TU basis. TU means 20 equivalent unit. It's how we in shipping, especially the container business, number things. So Andrew will do this 5 years overview of the shipping lanes. And then Fabricio will come up with the industries overview of the Canadian trade and give us a very updated perspective of the Mercosur-Canada trade, which is very important for us. And we have to keep that on the radar because we're still in the process of public awareness of this possible trade between our countries and our regions. Okay, so I'll just quickly start a little message here I have for everyone then before we start. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it's a pleasure for me to here today welcome you to the second webinar on behalf of the project partners, the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, ACOA, the Global Affairs Canada, GAC, Opportunities New Brunswick, and the Port of St. John. The project is coordinated through the Community Business Development Corporation in Charlotte Kings, New Brunswick. I wish to thank also the CCBC IT and marketing team, Renata, Daisy, Andrea, Andreas, and all the team there, Guilherme. Thank you for Andrew, Andrea, and Fabricio to coming. And in Canada's transportation network, efficient transportation systems, integrated components need to work together seamlessly. Gone are the days of various elements of transportation networks operating in isolation with each other. The key to success in today's world is partnership. That is why it is important for us all to converge here today and to attend these types of industry webinars or conferences. For example, in September we went to the ILUS, the Supply Chain Forum in São Paulo, and we will be also attending the Intermodal March 2019 fair also. Success depends on our ability to collaborate with each other and address common challenges in order to provide the best possible service to our clients. Canada is a champion of this partnership approach. Years ago, ahead of the rest, it launched the Canada Gateways strategy, which has been recognized by many countries and by private sector interests for being far-sighted and worthy of emulation. Under the Gateway approach, Canada's federal government works with all other levels of government and provides a private sector that can develop transportation and logistics needs to be competitive in the international trade. By bringing ports, airports, railways, shippers, and other logistics providers at the same table, Canada has developed an integrated system that provides a better user experience. New Brunswick St. John Port Gateway is part of this integrated system. Ideally located Canada's east coast, it is the shortest water route between North America and Europe, as well as Asia through the Suez Canal. With natural deep water ports that can accommodate the world's largest ships, uncongested marine terminals, and on-dock double-stack Class 1 service from CN, the St. John Free Trade Zone is an ideal choice for the movement of goods to and from North America. New Brunswick has been active in targeting and implementing a logistics development strategy focusing on North, Central, and South America and the Caribbean. The addition of CMA CGM, for example, the second largest container line in the world, to the Port of St. John, has provided New Brunswick shippers with additional capacity through which to grow their bilateral trade with the Latin American markets. So the conclusion, my friends, is the overall goal of the project is to identify and increase new existing trade opportunities between New Brunswick and Brazil in order to attract more trade volume of container cargo through the identification of these new trade opportunities through New Brunswick based on cargo facilities. So we'll just, Guilherme, if you can show the first film on New Brunswick province, we'll show you a little bit of New Brunswick and then the port, and then we'll start with Andrea with the platform.
Imagine a place where the air is clean, the people are friendly, and the business infrastructure resembles that of a large city, but on a personal scale. Welcome to New Brunswick, Canada, the country's only officially bilingual province. Our cultural diversity brings innovation, inventiveness, and entrepreneurship. In fact, more companies are investing here now than ever before. We have the largest exports per capita in Canada. New Brunswick is closely connected to Montreal, Toronto, Boston, and New York. We have international airports, large seaports, and a major highway network connecting us directly to the United States. Daily, we send seafood to Asia and French fries to the world's most popular restaurants. We're one of the top providers of maple syrup, and blueberries aren't far behind. As an early adopter of ICT, and with the best internet in Canada, New Brunswick is home to leading tech companies. Major organizations have placed their global communication centers here. Education is the key to our economic future, and our government continues to invest in our post-secondary institutions. We're also boosting post-secondary-led research and the graduate students behind it. Our GDP development is among the highest in Canada, and we're among the growth leaders in average weekly earnings. We have an amazing quality of life with beautiful, affordable houses, short commutes, friendly people, vibrant cultures, and spectacular vistas all year round. Access to quality healthcare has a positive impact on our lifestyle. New Brunswick Medicare entitles our people to universal, government-funded healthcare. New Brunswick has loyal workers who are fluent in English and French. We have stable, long-term resources, an economy that is export-focused, and global companies are investing here, now. We are strategically located, our telecommunications are world-class, and we are developing new industries. New Brunswick is a strong and trusted partner.
This is the story of a city built on loyalty over 200 years ago, together with the port that brought the world to the province of New Brunswick and brought our province's strength to the world. This is the story of St. John, New Brunswick. Welcome to our port city. We started with lumber and shipbuilding, and soon our railways helped connect St. John and our port to the west of our continent, expanding the capacity of our port to connect our nation to the world. We've grown together, the city of St. John and the port, and today, Port St. John is the third largest seaport in Canada by volume, handling over 28 million metric tons of diverse cargo every year. Thousands of New Brunswickers work in port-related industries like petroleum, forestry, fishing, and the import and export trade. We welcome hundreds of thousands of visitors every year and effortlessly turn their experiences into treasured memories. Port St. John is one of our nation's key ports, recognized for its strategic importance to Canada's trade and economy. This is the story of Port St. John and how the loyalty, pride, and community strength that we were founded on continues to drive everything we do today for our customers, our city, our province, our nation, and the world. Port St. John is where our story began. It is also where our future begins.
Okay, so Andrea, please show us how the Chamber can help us with this beautiful platform. Please welcome Andrea, then thank you.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Andrea, and I coordinate the commercial intelligence team here at CCBC. Most of the times, my directors are responsible for being here at stage, and I'm the one behind the computer doing research, matchmakings, and so on. But today, I have accepted the challenge of developing my presentation skills in English. So I count on your kindness and patience with potential nervousness that I may face. So I will now make a very brief introduction about CCBC. We are a business boutique focused in fostering trade and investments between Brazil and Canada, and we have been doing it for 45 years this September. We work in three main areas, which are arbitration and mediation for companies based anywhere in the world, and international business plus culture and education concerning Brazil and Canada. Speaking about international business promotion, we have services addressed to business development of our members. We organize trade missions for Brazilian companies in Canada and Canadian companies in Brazil. And we also have sectorial committees to address specific demands of different sectors, such as trade, technology, mining, etc. We have around 70 employees working in our office, and we count on a great structure of meeting rooms and auditoriums, such as this one, which are available for our members. And here we have some trade shows that we usually participate, either in Brazil and Canada, from different industries. And here's some of our initiatives in different fields. As I mentioned, international trade missions, content generation through our thematic podcasts, animated videos known as the Quick Market Facts. Also, we have some cultural projects such as the photography one, Exchanging Glances, CCBC Jazz Fest, CCBC Gastronomy Week, and so on. But today I'm here to present our trade committee study, which is available online and brings potential opportunities between Brazil and Canada. After my speech, I hope you can all access the platform and explore by yourselves the content produced, reaching us for more details and hopefully new memberships for CCBC. So there's a phrase that we say a lot here at CCBC, which is Brazil and Canada are two giant countries that know little of each other. And this, of course, is mainly because of Canada's neighbor from the south, which has a great market and usually calls more attention in international relations concerning the Americas. So because of that, much of our job here in CCBC is presenting these opportunities between both countries, opportunities that are real and that are waiting to be explored. We have an international trade committee coordinated by John Kirkup, which was established in 2014 in order to share information about what was already going on concerning trade between the two countries, and also to think about effective initiatives to create new business opportunities. By this year, 2018, there were around 11 members with different company profiles, logistic companies, importers, exporters, and basically their specific mission was to foster trade. And thinking about the trade promotions initiatives, the committee have worked in 3 main areas, which are the trade missions. There are some sectors there: plastic, coffee, food and beverage, technology. We have events for potential importers and exporters, such as this one, and also the content production. So the Brazil-Canada trade study came out inside this context. It was launched in March of this year, and it was after 1 year of data collection and work. It has its printed book version, but also the online platform for consultation. So the methodology was developed with 2 main focuses: to deal with already established markets between Brazil and Canada, and also new potential ones. Concerning the already established markets, the question was, what do Brazil and Canada already trade that could be traded with more added value? So some of the traditional sectors identified were the ones listed. There are more than these ones, but some of them are mineral, sugar, coffee, fertilizers, wheat, machinery, and so on. And concerning the new markets, there were more information to be crossed. So the questions were, what does Brazil export but do not export to Canada in one hand? What does Canada import but do not import from Brazil on the other hand? And again, the same logic replicated. So what does Brazil import but do not import from Canada? And what does Canada export but do not export to Brazil? So these questions, the committee gathered the information from the NCM codes used in the Mercosur trade and the AGS codes used in Canada and North America in general. And there were 250 selected codes from 24 different product categories. The items analyzed from each code were the listed ones, basically imports values and concentration, exports, market sizes in Brazil and Canada, regulations, custom tariffs, etc. So afterwards, 16 categories of products were identified as opportunities for Brazilian exporters in the Canadian market, and 8 categories for Canadian exporters in the Brazilian market. So here we will present 2 examples of each potential market in Brazil and Canada, starting with opportunities in Canada for Brazilian exporters. So the first example of new markets is the Amazonian fishes through the AGS code 030389, which is the number of 1 in Canadian imports, 1 code inside this category. The category has much more AGS codes. So the whole category brings information of other fish AGS codes that you may consult in another moment, but the example now will bring info only for the Amazonian fishes. So here we have the Canadian imports info from 2012 to 2016, showing that the values have been growing each year, reaching more than $35 million in 2016. On that year, there were 26 relevant importers, the major 3 with almost 30% of all imports. And just for you to know, for the Canadian government, the major importers are the business which collectively account for up to 80% of all the imports of a specific product. So here we have the country origin of fishes imported by Canada. So China, Taiwan, Vietnam, United States, Philippines. We wanted to see Brazil over there. Here we have, Here we have data brought by Euromonitor International, showing that in 2016, Canada consumed 146,000 tons of seafood, is the major category, 1.5% more than the previous year. And the forecast for 2021 is that this number reaches 158,000 tons. So speaking specifically of concerning fish, which is 72% of the seafood category, the numbers changed to 105,000 tons in 2016, and the forecast for 2021 is 113,000 tons. Here we mentioned the Canadian Food Inspection Agency for specific regulations concerning fish. We checked that by 2016 there were no custom tariffs for this product, so it's a good opportunity. And by the end of these items, there's always a small analysis summarizing all the data collected at the platform. So I'm not going to reproduce that again.
So just for sake of good order. Hello, yeah, thank you. This is live on the website for anyone to check, okay? Just a quick reminder for who's online or who's in the chamber. This is free, this is open, public. It's in our website in the chamber.
I will also like to highlight that CCBC is aware of cases of Amazonian fishes exports to Canada. So this delicacy is already getting to the Canadian tables. So we want to bring even more and more fishes there. So now concerning coffee, the logic is the same, despite the fact that Brazil is already the second major exporter of coffee to Canada. So we can say that this product has already established market in the country. Here we can see the total Canadian imports for the coffee not roasted and not decaffeinated. For roasted coffee, not decaffeinated, and in small proportions of roasted and decaffeinated coffee. Concerning coffee not roasted and not decaffeinated, which is generally known as green coffee, here we have the concentration IFO, with only 13 major importers representing around 80% of total imports. But for this type of coffee, we are aiming specifically small importers, small coffee roasters that imports gourmet coffee. So the smaller pulverized 20% of the coffee importers will be our targets, following the added value logic for the established markets. Considering the retail value, Euromonitor brings to us hot drinks as a category in a general. So there's tea, coffee. So the hot drinks reached $1.9 billion in Canada in 2016, and by 2021 the forecast aims at $3.1 billion American dollars. Since coffee represents 75% of this category, we can consider a market of $1.42 billion in 2016 and a forecast of $232 billion for 2021. And also below this graphic we have the company shares of the main coffee business in Canada, and also the categories of smaller companies that are pulverized. So they have the main players, the major players, and the smaller ones. And we have highlighted some information concerning the biggest players and also the brand shares that they have inside each company. Concerning taxes, quick concerning, there are free custom tariffs concerning coffee. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency is the institution responsible to control the quality of the trade, and also the Consumer Packing and Labeling Act for coffee that is already ready for consumers. And here I would also like to highlight that we have already helped many Brazilian gourmet coffee producers with sales in Canada, and we do promote many coffee cuppings as a marketing strategy, so Canadian coffee buyers can taste the specialty coffees as a different experience. We really value this experience through the marketing. So we also participate of the Canadian Coffee and Tea Show each year. That happens every September. And now speaking of Brazilian opportunities for Canadian importers, so it's the opposite direction. The first example talks about the Canadian cheese, which is very famous but still not consumed in Brazil. On the platform we have information of these HS codes, which includes but I will speak only of one of them, 040690, which includes other cheese like cheddar, camembert, brie, Gouda, provolone, all the good ones. So here we see that the peak of the Canadian exports was in 2014, but the numbers dropped on the following years, but still the total exports in 2016 were of more than $53 million. So below we see the ranking of Canadian exports by the classification of the cheese codes. So I picked the first one, which is the biggest one. The main countries that receive Canadian cheese are the US, of course, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, United Kingdom, and Germany. While Brazil has imported more than $62 million, mostly from Uruguay, Argentina, Netherlands, France, and Italy. The Brazilian market of dairy products was of $6 billion in 2016 and has grown more than 10% compared to the previous year. And the forecast for 2021 is $7 billion. So cheese category represents 27% of the dairy products in Canada and Brazil. So the numbers for the retail market specifically for this product will be $1.62 billion in 2016 and the forecast of $1.89 billion in 2021. So the perspectives are really good. And below we may see the company shares of the major Brazilian companies, such as the same example of the Brazilian logic for the coffee and the fish. I mean, not the fish, the coffee only. The main companies with some basic information specifically concerning the brand shares. Here we have the information concerning the custom tariff. By AGS code, they vary from 16 to 28%. And the Brazilian institutions related to this product is the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Supply, and the National Health Surveillance Agency. We'll see later on that these tariffs may reduce with the Mercosur agreement, but it's important to gather this information. So last but not least, for example, of the products from already established markets, we have the medical device, a category of products that Brazil already imports from Canada. Here are the codes under these categories. In 2016, Canada exported around 196. $196 million, considering all the category codes. The products most exported was the HS 90-2290, which stands for parts and accessories for apparatus based on the use of X-rays or other radiators. So considering the specific code, Canada has exported more to United States, Spain, South Africa, Japan, and Italy, while Brazil has imported more than $40 million, with Canada being its 10th major supplier. So we see there's a lot more opportunities with marketing campaign and initiatives to promote this code specifically. Considering custom tariffs for the mentioned code, there is 14% of import taxes, but they are eligible to the tariff reduction policy on machinery and equipment imports, ex-tariff, right? So this also is an opportunity for this sector. The responsible institution to be considered to this category of products is the National Agency of Sanitary Surveillance, where the products must be registered at. And again, we have a quick analysis summarizing the information previously presented. So again, we talked about 4 basic examples, but the study has 20 more product categories to be explored, and with all these details. And the plan for next year is update the platform with more research, the data revision, and trade info of 2017 and 18. And also foster new business trade missions to serve as business effective actions for accessing these potential clients and partners. And I would also like to highlight that I know that our friend here is going to talk more about the Mercosur agreement, but it's important to say that it has been developed a lot this year, and all the expectations are that the trade relations will rise expressively after the agreement, with the reduction of or zero custom tariffs for many products and facilitation of non-tariff barriers between Mercosur and Canada. So basically, after an overview of the study, an online platform, we would like to invite you all to access this information and to participate in CCBC's initiatives, receiving all the support of an institution that has been promoting trade relations for more than 45 years. With that effort, we want to bring closer business opportunities for both Brazilian and Canadian importers and exporters. So that's it. Thank you. Now I will show very quickly the website so you can access.
So we're going to show you live now how would you do this at home, or so this is our official website, okay?
Yeah, so we have ccbc.org.br /Commercio. So you have the Canadian opportunities here and the Brazilian ones. You choose depending on who you are. So concerning the Canadian opportunities for Brazilian exporters here, you have to fill some basic information so we can track you to send you more useful information to expand your business to Canada. Here is some basic information concerning the story, the methodology, but the important thing here is the top menu here with all the categories that I mentioned. So you may see, for example, fruits, and then you have all that information again as presented before. Remembering that this info is from 2016, so we will have to update it. So each item stands for every code, so it's very detailed. You have, I don't know, some nuts, Brazilian nuts that my friend also will talk about later, right? And if you want to change and see the other opportunities for the Canadian exporters, we change to the English version here. And you just have the other 6 products categories here. And I hope you all access the platform. And John, do you believe we should share
the coffee facts? Yeah. Do we have it on the screen? Just to show you the material, very short little film we made about the coffee.
Just as a reminder, here in our website is the new website of CCBC. We have some new publications here. So we have the Quick Market Facts, which is a series of videos from specific markets, mainly in Canada by now, but we are producing more videos for Canadian exporters, so talking about Brazil. But we also have the Quick Trade Facts, so numbers of imports, exports, what both countries are trading. So this is also useful information for you to monitor the trade relations and also some investment and services trade between Brazil and Canada. And now I'd just like to share this small video, an example of the Quick Trade Facts that we did for talk about coffee in Canada. So the video is in Portuguese, but I think it's going to be useful for the audience here at least.
Quick Market Facts, café no Canadá. Os canadenses estão entre os principais consumidores de café no mundo. A média per capita é de quase 3,5 kg por ano. Em 2016, o Canadá ficou entre os maiores importadores globais e também foi o 7º maior importador de café do Brasil. O Brasil está entre os 3 países que mais exportam café verde para o Canadá. No caso de café torrado brasileiro, existem oportunidades a serem exploradas. Em 2016, as vendas de café no varejo canadense aumentaram 4% em volume e 10% em valor, comparado com o ano anterior. Foram vendidas 84 mil toneladas de café e quase 2,5 bilhões de dólares canadenses, com destaque para os cafés encapsulados, que foram responsáveis por 51% de todas as vendas em 2016. Estima-se que até 2021, a taxa de crescimento do volume de café se manterá em 4% e crescerá ainda 8% em relação a valores. Já as vendas de varejo devem chegar a 3,8 bilhões de dólares canadenses. Em 2016, o Canadá importou cerca de 1 bilhão e 200 milhões de dólares americanos, valor próximo ao de 2015. Porém, o valor agregado dos grãos foi 11% maior. Deste mercado, 20% está distribuído em micro e pequenas empresas canadenses, que consomem lotes menores e com maior valor agregado, criando oportunidade no nicho de cafés especiais para os produtores brasileiros. Os produtos que mais se destacam nesse cenário são os orgânicos, descafeinados, com sabores exóticos e produzidos de maneira sustentável. O contexto também reflete o movimento conhecido como terceira onda de cafeterias, que está conquistando cada vez mais fãs. As microtorrefadoras valorizam cada vez mais os processos artesanais da produção de café, desde a coleta do grão até a preparação do café na xícara. São os cafés de origem única, ou single origin, que contam sua história desde a fazenda, passando pela vida das pessoas envolvidas no processo e o cuidado do produtor em cada etapa, fazendo com que cada café seja único. Trabalhar com maior valor agregado em produtos em que o Brasil já é referência, como o café, é bom tanto para o produtor brasileiro quanto para o consumidor canadense. A CCBC tem grande experiência na promoção de cafés especiais do Brasil no Canadá. Quer saber mais e participar da nossa próxima missão de negócios? Entre em contato conosco pelo e-mail comercial@ccbc.org.br.
Thank you very much, Andrea. We'll get this translated in English again. But I think our friends in Canada could understand the floor. So, Andrew, could you please join us and take the floor, please? Thank you. So, Andrew will give us an overview of the last 5 years, the trade based in TUs, in containers, the shipping line statistics manifest there. So thank you, Andrew.
Good morning, everyone. It's my first webinar, so good morning to everybody watching through the internet. Okay. So my name is Andrew. I work with Datamar. It's a company that has a partnership with the shipping industry. We receive shipping manifests, which help us to build a database of trade for Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay. We also gather other sources of data, some of them public, to build up a picture of what's happening in maritime aspects for these 4 countries on the East Coast, South America. And today I hope to bring some useful information to you on what happens between Brazil and Canada in terms of trade and some of the logistics aspects of that, and also looking at some examples of the companies. Thank you, Andrea. That was a really wonderful presentation, you know, to see exactly the research you've done to identify those opportunities. I think that's really excellent. And hopefully, even if you don't work in any of those segments that was picked up, that will be some useful information for you in this presentation. So we'll just start with a quick picture of the balance of trade, looking at Brazilian trade data. You can see, first of all, on the left here, trying to see if this is a pointer. Yeah. So on the left here, you have the balance of trade, weight in tons, and here on the left in value, on the right in value. So the blue is exports, the blue bars are exports, the red bars are imports, and the green is the resulting trade balance. So looking at the exports since 2014-15, they have gone up, and the imports have dropped as Brazil entered a recession and the exchange rate devalued, the Brazilian real devalued. So that's a reality overall. And in the value of the goods, you can see a similar story, although it's not as exacerbated. What's happening now? 2018 is not complete. As you can see down here, it's only up to September, but it's already recovering. The imports are already almost at the same value as the whole of last year. So imports are recovering in terms of weight and also in terms of value. Just one more point of interest there. We had a negative balance of trade in terms of value, not in terms of weight, but in terms of value back in 2013, 2014. This next slide shows the maritime trade, which is the data that we have. We don't have air trade, so it's only maritime trade, but it's the vast majority of trade. And what you can see on this graph on the left is the same thing. So essentially, we can see that our data is in line with government data. It shows exports have risen. The blue is exports and the orange is imports. So exports have risen. And on the right here, what we can see is that, oh, sorry, actually just over here, what we can see again is that imports are recovering. 2018 is not complete, and they're almost at the same level as last year. And the other thing to note is that the vast majority of trade occurs in dry bulk cargo. So over here you can see how much goes in containers. In terms of weight, the vast majority is dry bulk cargo. So all of that, probably things that we already know, but it's interesting to bear in mind when discussing all these issues.
Andy, if I may, by dry bulk we mean Panamax or post-Panamax break bulk vessels which bring fertilizer. They don't come in containers. So that shows you how the volume of break bulk vessels, the fertilizers, the potash used in Mato Grosso and Goiás, it's a huge volume from Canada, huge volume, okay? So these are cargoes which are not in containers. These are break bulk vessels.
Yeah. Actually, John, what we have here is, so you see on the left here, you got BB, that's break bulk. Yeah. So liquid bulk is also pretty small, but dry bulk is huge. It's mostly dominated by ore exports and fertilizer imports, right? Okay. So we're just gonna dive in a little bit into the container trades. Why is that? Because we're looking in this presentation to talk a little bit about what are the new opportunities that we're looking at. So on the left here, once again, we're talking about weight. And on the right, we're talking about TEU, which is the volume of containers. So in terms of weight, the first thing we can notice is the recovery of imports, which in general we saw has happened. In containers, it was much faster. So in 2017, it had already recovered. Imports had already bounced back substantially. Another thing to note is what's happening this year in terms of volumes of TEU. You can see here the added expectation. That's just a linear pro rata estimate. And it's most likely going to happen because usually this last quarter of the year is the busiest time of the year. So even just maintaining a pro rata expectation, you're looking at volumes rising close to 30% increase in container volumes compared to last year. So that's really substantial. This is just trade between Brazil and Canada.
Andy, and I've just to point out nearly 20,000 TEUs just on the exports, right? So that's 20,000 TEUs a year.
That's right. Yeah. At the moment, we have just over 15,000. That's January to September. So for containers, that's a pretty good outlook, 30% approximately. So how does all this Brazilian cargo get to Canada today? So shipping lines provide container services, and you might think there's a couple of container services that are being used for this cargo to get to Canada. So just talking a little bit about logistics, but we will see that it's actually not as simple as that. These are some of the container services that they have names that are given by the shipping line. So you can see there's probably some cargo from the Amazon. And you might think these are just going to stop. there's even shipping services going to Asia, carrying stuff. Asas is a service that goes via Asia. So it doesn't make much sense if it's going from Brazil to Canada. Why is it going via Asia? But it does, some of it. So you might think this list should be stopping by now, but it's not. So the point of this slide is just to show that there are many, many ways that containers get to Canada, and they're not all necessarily efficient. So what are they doing? Well, this slide shows you some of the transshipment areas where these Brazilian exports, this year only, have been going. So we'll start with some stranger ones, like 4 TEU were transshipped in Montevideo to get to Canada. This one's a little bit stranger. You have 45 TEU going to Hong Kong to get to Canada. And then those are probably anomalies. The next one is obviously a more established trade, because you have 1,800 TEU going to Canada, but transshipping in North Africa. Most of that in Tangier and Algeciras. So that's clearly an established trade route to get to Canada. This is where most of the containers transship, in the Caribbean. So 8,000 mostly, and then you got 4 different ports there: Cristobal in Panama, Cartagena in Colombia, Altamira in Mexico, and Kingston in Jamaica. And then you have cargoes which are not transshipping, they're going directly, but not to Canada. They go to the northeastern USA. About 5,000 have gone to either New York or to Philadelphia. So that gives you a picture of how the containers get to Canada. Who's taking them? Well, let's take a quick look at what are the shipping lines that are taking them. So we have initially a small one, this One Ocean Network Express. So far this year, they've taken 50 TEU to Vancouver. So that seems to be an established line. And we'll go from the smallest to the biggest. There aren't that many shipping lines currently existing. So there's less and less of those, and you may not be so happy about that, but that's the reality at the moment. And we'll start with the smaller ones and go up to the bigger ones. I've actually separated also Maersk from Hamburg Süd, which is really today the same company. So this next one is Zim. So you can see they take cargo up to Halifax and go via Colombia. And over here we have the totals. You can see 2 TEU there, just to show that there's a little bit more cargo, but that's their established route. Next one is Maersk, where essentially they tranship everything in this area here, either Tangiers or Algeciras, and some in other routes. CMA CGM, they're using the port of St. John. So they take everything, or the majority of it. You can see there's still 126 that get there some other way, but the majority of it via Kingston. And here you have more than one route. So this is Hapag-Lloyd. They take things in 3 different routes, either directly to New York, or to Montreal via Tangier, or to Vancouver via Cartagena. So that's Hapag-Lloyd. Hamburg Süd. So they have 4 different routes. Vancouver via Cartagena. That's the second biggest one. Their main trade takes it to Philadelphia, directly to Philadelphia. Some to New York, and also some to Philadelphia itself, but via Cartagena, transshipping Cartagena. And finally, the last one. There's a few more here. Different colors to give you the idea. MSC, so they take stuff mostly through Altamira in Mexico, up to Montreal. But they also take a lot up to Montreal via Cristobal at the Panama Canal entrance. And to Vancouver, quite a lot to Vancouver, so really much more than the other carriers via Cristobal. And also they're using St. John via Cristobal. And finally, quite a small volume for them directly to New York. It would be impossible to make a graph out of the other routes, by the way. It goes everywhere.
Andy, just for an update, MSC is back with Freeport, Bahamas now. They just started 2 weeks again, which is the original service. So we'll see a lot of that going through Freeport and then through Montreal again.
So they've stopped transshipping at
the double
at
transshipment.
Altamira?
Yeah, they stopped the double transshipment, yeah.
Okay. Another element of logistics to cover is the cargoes that go to Canada, but those ones that go directly to New York and Philadelphia mostly, and Baltimore, as I heard earlier as well from one of the attendants here. And you can see it's just a breakdown on the West Coast, 7,500. Oh, this is over the last 5 years, so it just gives you an overview. 7,500 TU goes to Vancouver, and you can see there about 500 is going via the USA, so stops at a USA port and then goes into Canada. On the East Coast, it's different. You have more overall going through the USA than going to Canadian ports. So you have about 14,000, the majority of which goes to Montreal, or has gone to Montreal. And in the USA, the majority going to New York, but quite a lot to Philadelphia as well, and then going up via the US. And then just the same thing for imports on Vancouver. On the West Coast, pretty similar, even less coming through the US. And on the East Coast, the majority, it's a bit maybe different this time. The majority is still coming through the US, but more coming from the Canadian ports. So,
And Nancy, that's our challenge, is to bring inbound cargo through Canadian ports. That's one of our challenges, especially St. John.
yeah, I think that's the thing you notice out of that. There's no direct service to Canada, although I was hearing from someone here earlier that there used to be a direct service to Canada, but not at the moment. So.
But even Montemar was making it out of Philadelphia, and our service, when we had the service, was all to either any eastern of the United States port, and then trucked up. So we didn't take.
So the service was only up to the U.S.
Only up to the U.S.
Okay.
We took over the Montemar service when they went bankrupt, and even then, they were making it via the U.S. as well.
Okay. So. Okay. So I'm not sure if in the past there used to be a direct service or not.
Not
we
sure,
know that
maybe to Halifax. I'm not sure.
Only break bulk service, but long time ago.
only break bulk services. So as far as container services are concerned, there isn't currently one to Canada, and
Correct.
we can't remember one that used to go direct.
And that's our challenge. Hopefully have one of the U.S. East Coast service having a direct call to a Canadian port.
What kind of difference would that make to the transit time?
Not much. The distance, mileage, nautical mileage is nearly the same. We showed that in the last presentation. It surely will make a difference on the rate. The rate will be the same as the U.S. East Coast rate, which will level up the competition and the costs and the competitive edge there for the Canadian products coming in and out. Thank you, Angie.
Great. So all of this is so that we can talk a little bit about what cargoes are going and the product that the Chamber has developed, identifying what are those new opportunities. Here we just have a quick table of what are the Brazilian containerized exports to Canada and TU, 2017, 2018, and this is a 5-year trend, so you can kind of have an idea of how those things have gone. So in terms of coffee, chicken, granite tiles, and similar articles, these are descriptions that Tamar is giving. You see the top 10 down here, you can see concentrates out of a total of 19,000 last year, TU. Top 10 have almost 50% of that volume. So these are some of the cargo. These are the cargoes that are being exported in containers. And what we did was we took a few examples from the same ones that Andrea had already identified and tried to see whether the Datamar statistics could shine a light on what is currently going and what are those companies that are taking it. So we already know the developed markets. That's why we're looking at what is happening in these new markets. So we took the first one, fish, classified as 030389. It's essentially frozen fish outside of the usual chapter, so not otherwise specified in the usual chapters like salmon and so on. And what we found was, this is Brazilian data, CCBC data, so you can see that weight-wise per year, so far in 2018, I think this is up to date, up to September, you had 90,000 kilos. That's hardly anything. So, and that's the value in dollars. So if we just keep in mind this number here, $283,000, on the next slide, we can see the comparison. So we had $283,000 in the previous slide, and here we have $35,000. 35 million, sorry. So the Canadian market is 35 million, and Brazil is exporting 285,000. There's not even scratching the surface of that potential market. So that being said, who is shipping that stuff? So here we have an extract from our data liner database, which shows this code, 030389. And then it shows the Brazilian shipper and the Canadian consignee and how many containers to use and in weight. So as you can see, about 104,000 kilos compares pretty well with what the government statistics showed, which was about 96,000 kilos. And you can see that that is essentially equal to 9 containers. So it's a very, very small amount of cargo. And you can see the companies here. So the shipper was Brazex, and the importer was Lagoon Seafood. And so you can see the data. There's not very much, really, in 1 year, so far, well, 9 months, to have 5 shipments of this big market. And I actually tried, I made a note here, I actually tried to analyze Amazon fish because they're in a different, they're not in this NCM, they're not in this HS6 code. Amazonian fish are in a different one, but as far as the government data shows, there are no exports of Amazon fish to Canada. So that means there's an even better opportunity, but I couldn't show you a graph with nothing on it. Okay. So next one, Brazil nuts. You might think Brazil is exporting Brazil nuts. Just the name, the clues in the name, but it's not really. Exports to Canada, 116,000. Again, that's very little. 1 million in FOB, and 7 million. So it's about 1 out of 7 is coming from Brazil. The majority actually comes from the Canadian imports. Majority, Andrea was talking to me, the majority comes from Bolivia and Peru. The Canadian imports of Brazil nuts come from Bolivia and Peru. So an obvious opportunity there. And that's the number for 2016. So I'd hazard it's a higher number this year. And which are the companies? These are the companies that are shipping it. So that's about 6 containers of Brazil nuts being exported from Brazil to Canada. So again, you can see the shipper name there, the consignee there. So we're just coming to the end of the presentation, but I'll just show you a couple more examples of imports. The same thing on imports. So newsprint is the biggest containerized import, and you can see here the trend on that is a downward trend. Obviously, imports took a hit over the last 5 years, and we have in here some of the examples. I think Andrea remember that lentils and peas were some of the HS6s that were identified in the report. Again, the 10%, the top 10 have about 50% of the total market. So the examples I picked up here were Pacific salmon imports in 2018. See about 105,000. Again, very few imports of Pacific salmon. And it's all under one consignee, Noronha Indústria e Comércio. That's the only company taking advantage of the fact that Canada exports a lot of this product. And obviously the opportunity for the Canadian exporter. Only Albion farms and fisheries are taking advantage of a market where Brazil consumes a lot of Pacific salmon. Next example, this is the last one, pet food. So it's a more established market. You can see there's data for every year at least, almost 1 million or 1 million kilos. But again, most of it in the hands of just one company. So Jeffo Nutrition has exported 53 or almost all of the Canadian imports have come from Jeffo Nutrition. So there's opportunities for more Canadian shippers there. That's it for me. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And if you need any information, please come and talk to me afterwards. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll have Fabrizio ending and giving us a little overview of the industry, please, Fabrizio. Thank you.
Just a quick comment concerning the salmon. I remember that past year there was a salmon opportunity with the crisis of salmon in Chile, right? And we reached many fish institutions in Canada, salmon agencies and promotion, but many of the Canadian companies, they didn't see the need of getting further with this sales. So we need a lot of work to, I have the client for you, come please, and they still need to be more confident that they can explore this Brazilian market. So I just remember.
Good point, Andrea. And actually, in first week December, we're taking 8 companies to New Brunswick. Out of the 2 companies, we'll be visiting salmon, scallops, and herring farms to bring to Brazil. So, Fabrício, thank you very much for coming. I'll give the word to you.
Thank you for inviting me. It's the third time that I'm here at the chamber, and I already feel at home speaking. I'm also not very familiar with webinars, but I'll try to do my best here. Congratulate you guys for the presentations. Very good insights that we have, delicious products that we can import and export to each other. My goal here is to present a little bit about the Mercosur and Canada free trade negotiation. We at CNI are very vocal at the need for Brazil to increase our free trade agreements network. We are involved in a lot of negotiations, but we still didn't have that negotiation closed yet. If we think about European Union Mercosur, for instance, so we still need a very good deal, a very good negotiation, trade agreement, and I think the negotiation with Canada it's very feasible, and it's not something for the medium term. I think for the next year we can have the negotiations closed. And also, I think it goes in the same direction of our new elected government. They want more trade agreements. They want agreements with, they want not leaving behind South America or anything, but we have already a very important network of agreements in South America, but having more agreement with developed countries, and Canada, of course, it's one of them.
Our traditional partners, né, Fabrício?
Yes. So why should Mercosur negotiate with Canada? Our view from CNI. First, Canada obviously is a large economy, is the 10th largest economy. Also, it's an important international investor. This is something we don't see much being said. Canada is the 10th world investor, and Brazil receives only 3% of Canadian investments that are directed to the world. The first point, also, Canada is not only a large economy, but also one of the largest importers in the world, so it's a great market for us. Also a large market in terms of public procurement, which is something that the trade agreements deal with. They liberalize market for government procurement. Brazil has some opportunities on Canada markets. We're going to talk a little bit more. A lot of this products has already been mentioned by Andrea and Andrew. And we face tariff in some of these products. We usually say that, well, a lot of developed countries do not have import tariffs. It's true, half true, but half of the story. I mean, we face some tariffs that are important to be removed, and we also have opportunity in the trade negotiations to talk about non-tariff barriers. Bilateral trade with Canada is 4.5 billion, but we think, as the chamber does and everyone here that presented, I mean, it is a trade that can be boosted, and the main tool for that is the agreement. The last thing here for our diagnosis, Canada has signed a lot of trade agreements, so it's a very experienced partner, and Brazil can gain a lot of experience negotiating with Canada and also having the same condition as other countries do. So we don't have an agreement with Canada. Other countries do. They have better conditions to enter to Canada market. Here's something that I already mentioned a little bit. The 10th largest economy, 7th world exported and imported. A little bit about Brazil and Canada relations. In goods, US is the main partner of Canada. We know that. But it's very, very concentrated in the US. 76% of the export and 51% of imports. The main sectors are mineral, fuels, transport equipment, mechanic, machinery, and metals. In terms of investments, Canada is the 11th main receptor of investment and the 6th main investor. The United States, again, is the main partner, 40% and 30% in terms of receiving and also investor. And South America is only 0.3% of these investments. Sectors, main IT and renewable energy that's being done. In terms of services, 8 billion in exports. Canada exports 8 billion. Mainly in commercial services, tourism and financial services, and import 96 billion, mainly on this, also the same sectors basically. Public procurement, as I mentioned, it's a great market, but it's something that we have to pay attention because we're talking about 200 to 300 billion. And if we talk about Brazil, for example, mainly the government procurement is done by the federal government, although states procurement is important. Municipal procurement, São Paulo and Rio, they're very important. But when you talk about Canada, you're talking about a partner that most of its procurement is done by subnational level, so that we have to work on. Well, our trade flow has already been mentioned a little bit. I'm just gonna speak a little bit more on the second graph here, the graph below. We have a 4.5 trade flow, and when we look at about the manufacturing trade flow, it is also an important flow. We are talking about a 2.5, at least a little bit more of manufacturing trade, which is more of what CNI represents. And although it has been a trade that Brazil had deficit in the previous years, we have now a surplus of $800 million with Canada. So we have opportunities. Naturally, we always talk about opportunities that Brazil has in terms of natural resources or goods that are more related to natural resources, but we also have opportunities when we talk about the manufacturing sector. The composition of our exports and imports along the last decade. In terms of imports, manufacturing increase, the participation from 75% to 87%, and our exports also increase in terms of the composition, which is kind of like counterintuitive. I don't know if that's the word, because we have increased a lot our exports of minerals, our exports of agricultural products, but when you look at the composition to Canada, the manufacturing export have increased its participation on the total value. The top 10, we have mentioned a little bit already. The 10 products more exported from Brazil to Canada, we have the aluminum, the first one, we have sugarcane, we have semi-finished products of iron and steel, so the steel cluster here have opportunities, raw coffee and machinery. When you talk about what we import from Canada, potassium, also the chemical industry here, and then we have a very diversified imports from medicines, coal, wheat grains, airplane. We also have medical devices as well, so it's very diversified. Brazil-Canada trading services and investments, we already spoke a little bit. Our trade flowing services is very, very short, very few. It's under our potential for sure. We have a trade flow of only 480 million. Brazil has a surplus of 12 millions, which also surprised me because when we talk about services, Brazil always with developed country has some deficit, and with Canada we have a surplus. Canada is the 8th largest destination of Brazilian services, mainly financial services and other professional services. And Canada is the only 23rd largest source of Brazilian imported services. And here I see a clear opportunity for Canada to export more services to Brazil. It is a more based service country, so some work has to be done here because Canada can have much more opportunity in Brazil. And investments, also Brazil invests in Canada only 700 million. It represents 99% is greenfield. We received, Canada has invested 13 billion investment in Brazil. Brazil recently received 13 billion, and only 3% of this stock came from Canada. And Brazil and Canada have already signed a double taxation agreement, and which is something that we can revise and review it, because Brazil has been signing new agreements that have been better clauses that are more close to what OECD have proposed, and Brazil is adopting. So in order to have an agreement that is more competitive for our investments there and Canadian investment here, it's something that we can work on in terms of policy. Something important about Canada trade policy is not only the federal government has a jurisdiction in terms of trade, but also provincial, and you have shared jurisdiction. So when you talk about agriculture, when you talk about other topics that are in the negotiations, such as environment or communication, energy, for example, you have to talk to provincial governments as well. So Canada is a particular, very peculiar partner when we talk about this. Here is more or less the Canadian tariff profile. When you talk about agriculture, Canada's tariff is around 16%. This is average applied tariff, import tariff. And when you talk about non-agricultural products, you're talking about a very less tariff, import tariff. It's around 2%. A lot of Canadian imports, 62%, they're already duty-free, so they don't pay any import tariff to get inside Canada. So, Mercosur and Canada trade negotiations, a little bit of our recent timeline here. Of course, some of the conversation have been begun before, but in 2010, we have an exploratory dialogue between Mercosur and Canada. In 2015, actually in 2012, you have an informal consultation from our government to our private sector, but it was very informal. But in 2015, we have more of a robust public consultation with Brazilian private sector to check what are their interests for a negotiation with Canada. And in 2018, this year, we have launched the negotiations. It took a little bit more than we thought. We thought in second semester of 2017 we would open negotiations. but it happened in 2018. In 2018, we had already some advance here, some progress. In March was the first round of negotiations. In Canada, June we have the second round in Brazil, in Brasilia. One important fact, due to the fact that Mercosur is having a lot of trade negotiations at the same time, European Union, Canada, EFTA, Mexico and other countries. Countries from Mercosur, they decide to have one country as a focal point for each negotiation. It's not the case for European Union, but it's the case for EFTA and Canada, for example. Brazil is the focal point for Canada, so the negotiation rounds happen either in Brazil or in Canada. In the case of EFTA, for example, it happens in Europe or Buenos Aires in general. So the second round was in June. September, we have the third round of negotiations, and this third round of negotiations, we had some progress in terms of when we want to exchange offer. Just to make a quick parenthesis here, the exchange of offer is the most important point of a trade negotiation. That's where countries start actually the most sensible topics of the negotiation, start to negotiate the most sensible topics. That's where you send your offer in terms of goods, which goods you are intending to reduce your tariff, what's your offer in terms of services, what movements you want to make in terms of services, and either in terms of government procurement. And you do, of course, the first exchange of offer is not the final one because countries start to negotiate based on that original offer. So here the basis of the exchange of offer was made, and there is an expectation to have the exchange of offer in Brasilia next month. Brazilian negotiations, they are a little bit cautiously. They don't want to say that we're gonna have the exchange of offer in December, but there is opportunity to do so. There is a possibility to happen in December in Brazil. Well, in terms of, we have looked at a little bit of only the offensive interests of Brazil, a little bit different of what Andrea and Andrew made. They look both sides. We have looked only our interests in terms of exports in goods to Canada. And we also separated in two groups. The first groups, I imagine we have used the same methodology as Andrea mentioned. The first group are the products that we have already some established market. We have some market share already in Canada. And the other one is that we either have very, very little market share, almost insignificant, or we have no market share yet. We do not export to Canada. So in the first group, we have 49 groups of products, 49 plus 17 groups of products, and 17 we face tariff, and 49 group of products we do not face any tariff. When you go to the second group, we have 79 group of products that we face tariff and 191 that are duty-free. So actually, Canadian market is already very open to Brazilian exports. But there are some important products that we face some tariff. Here, more or less, the main sectors that Brazil is offensive. Due to the fact that we have the number of products, some sectors they appear here at the first places because they have many products inside of this group. So machinery, chemical, food, metallurgy, vehicles that are important products, that group of products are sectors that we have opportunity over there. Some examples here, shoes. Brazil had, in the past, Brazil was very competitive in exporting shoes. We had more than 1/3 of the United States imports from some years in the past. We lost a lot, of course, to China, but we face a tariff here of almost 17% in Canada's market. Meat, we face some tariffs of 13%. This is the average tariff, so there are a lot of products inside, just to show the big picture. Vehicles, we have actually companies from the vehicle sector that see opportunity in Canadian market. They have this world projects that is cars that are the same in Brazil and the same around the world, and they see opportunities to export to Canada. And chicken meat also around 4.5%. So going to the end of the negotiation, we in CNI we have a group of a coalition that we call. It's called SEB, Coalizão Empresarial Brasileira, and we have over there entities from industrial sector, manufacturing sector, but also from services and also from the agriculture sector. And basically, we make position papers to the government. We have conversations with negotiators. We show our positions to them during these meetings. We also do missions to follow the negotiations in the country. The negotiation is taking place when it's a hot moment of the negotiation. And these 8 points here is more or less what we say common ground of a lot of sectors. So it's a miscellaneous of sectors, so it's difficult to have a common ground, because in some areas of the world, for instance, Asia, agriculture has a very offensive interests, and the manufacturing sector has almost no interest at all to have negotiations. So when we talk about Canada, I mean, we put here 8 basic points. Rules of origin that represent substantive industrial activity. Of course, this is not possible for every sector, but this is important to not only promote any type of trade, but promote trade and investment as well. The inclusion of duty drawback for our industry is important, because then we can import, as long as we fulfill the rules of origin, we can import some inputs without paying duties. The exclusion of remanufacturing or used goods. Transitional periods for sensitive goods. Some goods that, of course, we know that, as WTO rules mention, almost all the trade has to be eliminated. Tariffs has to be eliminated in around 10 years. But a lot of negotiation has periods that go more than that. You have South Korea, for example, that for agriculture they have a transitional period of 20 years. And we are asking for some of the sectors that are sensitive to have 12 and 15 years. Of course, this is a small portion. The most important portion of the trade between countries has to be in no more than 10 years. Having rules in public procurement and intellectual property that respects our public policies in Brazil. This is mainly to attend our healthy sector, but Brazil's public procurement, Brazil's offers in other negotiations have been very important. We are opening a lot our market in terms of public procurement. We do not have anymore those decrees that create margins of preference that goes until 25%. You have one other sector that you have margins of preference that are older, but those margins of preference that were done in Plano Brasil Maior in 2011, we don't have it anymore. A good offer in terms of agricultural products. I think that's the great trade-off when you talk about Brazil. We want to have access in the agricultural market of our partner, and this is something that is actually making our negotiation with the European Union very tough, because they simply don't want to open their agricultural market. It's a little bit ironic, because it's a moment where European Union could take the lead in the world's free trade agenda, and they simply have no mandate to have at least some satisfactory quotas in terms of agricultural products. And use sanitary and phytosanitary measures based on science. So we know that nowadays tariffs are still important, but when you go to some non-tariff measures, some sanitary and phytosanitary measures, some countries, is not the case of Canada, but some countries do not have the right balance between protecting the rights of the consumers and the health of consumers and protecting the industry or the sector. So some countries go a little bit unbalanced on that. Well, industrial development clause for new investments. So what does that mean? For some new manufacturing that can be developed in the country, we can have an increase of transitional period of course, for some years, an increase on the import tariffs. And one thing that is important, we want to have a chapter of investment in dealing with the topic of investment in the agreement with Canada, but Brazil still do not accept the investor-state dispute clause. We have signed a lot of agreements that had this investor-state dispute clause in the past, but none of them were approved by the Congress. Well, what does this clause mean? This means that a company can sue a government in an arbitration forum out of both countries, and Brazil sought, our Congress found that unconstitutional, and we have to deal with it. Maybe we can have some progress during the next government, but it's still what's the trend to Brazil. So what do we expect in terms of our negotiation with Canada? We expect the first exchange of offer during the next round. We expect for the beginning of 2019 to have progress in terms of rules of origin negotiation especially, but also all types of rules. And the conclusion of the negotiation is still in 2019. It is possible, it depends a lot on our domestic agenda, which is gonna consume a lot of our time. And depends on the priority that our new government will give to the trade agreements agenda in general and trade agenda as well. And I think it's going to be an important priority for the next government. It caused me a little, some tension when we want to put together a lot of ministries, and maybe the same ministry that we have to have time to deal with our pension reform and our tax reform will be the same one to deal with negotiation. So this caused me a little bit of tension, but I think this thing will be fixed until the until the beginning of the next government. So the conclusions, just to sum up a little bit of the points that we made here. Canada is an experienced partner, but we're still not relevant for each other. And so it's a very important negotiation to Brazil, specifically to Mercosur, to equalize our conditions that other countries have in Canadian markets, and we don't. There should be also a more strong partnership between government and private sector to identify non-tariff measures that we can do during the negotiations, specifically talking here about technical and SPS. We have opportunities in Canada, that is very important to state, and we have opportunities that we face tariffs. It's very common to listen that tariffs are not important anymore, but they are. And we face them not only in agriculture, but as well as in manufacturing sector. The agreement should ensure market access also for both sides in services and public procurement. And here, I think there is great opportunity for Canadian export of services in Brazilian markets. of course, in manufacturing as well, but I see that our services trade, especially from our import from Canada, is very little, and it can be increased. Investment negotiation, that can be challenging because of what I mentioned to you guys, the dispute settlement, and also screening, but especially the dispute settlement clauses. This agreement is an opportunity to increase bilateral relation. Actually, is the most important tool that we have now to boost our bilateral trade. Canada will enter into a very small list of countries that we have agreements. So tariffs, high tariffs that we have in Brazil, 35%, 20%, 14%, it will be decreased for Canadian exports. And we only have that in South America. For some sectors with Mexico, Israel, and now Egypt, and not to mention South Africa because it's very small, and India is a very small agreement. So it is in our opinion, CNI's opinion, the most important tool for us to boost off our bilateral trade. That's it. It's basically. Thank you again for the invitation. As I mentioned, already feel at home here. I hope we can, the chamber can help us to have more relation with the private sector and maybe address the barriers that we face bilaterally. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Fabrício. Okay, with that, we'll conclude our webinar. Maybe if anyone wants to ask a question, I'll open the floor if you wish. Clayton, I'm not sure if there are any questions on the internet if you want to have a look. Do you want to have anyone wants to make a question? I would like to make a question quickly to Fabrício, if I may. You did mention about the government new international policies getting closer to the traditional markets, North America and Europe, which I think is very important for us. It's always been our market. You did say that with Europe, it seems we're having more difficulties now. But I liked very much your comment that Canada has a great opportunity to be one of the few countries which will have a better tariff. What else do you think we need apart from the push we're doing here and awareness? I think this platform is very important to people understand that there is an agreement out there and that we have to vocalize, be it through Facebook, YouTube. How else could we promote this more and more, and maybe even the chamber can help you more, Fabrício?
In every change of government, I mean, you have these moments that maybe you have to reinforce the priorities. We have that when we recently changed government from Dilma to President Temer. We had to reinforce some of our priorities, and this was done very successfully. And especially when we have a change of government that is more radical that we're seeing right now. It's not radical in terms of economic policy. I think it's radical in terms of the names of new ministries, of the composition of our Congress, the composition of the ministries itself, the teams that they would deal with. So I think any action that the private sector can do in the high level to reinforce that, one, trade agreements agenda is a priority. Second one, Canada has to be on the priority list, and it is let's say, I don't remember the expression in English, but I'll try. It's a cherry pick. What's the
cherry pick? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, cherry pick.
So it's something that we can pick on the short term, and it's a great partner for us. So every events like this that you're making that shows more concrete opportunities, because sometimes you talk about trade agreements and you don't see a glue, something that actually glues the partner with Brazilian economy. And in Canada, you see it in terms of investment, in terms of service. So every action your partners there in Canada can do in high level and here in Brazil to reinforce the priorities, in my opinion, the most important action now.
Perfect. Anyone else? Questions? Yeah? Pode.
Senhor Fabrício, o senhor está dizendo que de 2010 até 2018 o Canadá está tentando fazer negociação com o Mercosul. Agora estão tentando ter uma nova negociação em dezembro. Eu duvido que os senhores consigam fechar em 2019 pelo seguinte: o Mercosul é Venezuela, foi presidente e todo mundo sabe o estado que ele está. Depois, a Argentina está pedindo 50 bilhões de dólares para o FMI. Depois, nós temos Uruguai, Paraguai. O Uruguai é o único país da América do Sul que faz parte do Mercosul, que é equilibrado. Agora, se não me engano, eu estou meio fora disso, porque o Mercosul, em 2001, nós estávamos conversando sobre ALCA. Aí esqueceram a ALCA e esqueceram. Em 20 anos, o Brasil fechou 3 acordos comerciais com países africanos. Nada contra isso. Porém, nós estamos falando de bilhões de dólares, nós não estamos falando em migalha. Então, voltando ao nosso foco, eu diria para o senhor o seguinte: existe algum impedimento legal em o Brasil fazer um acordo com o Canadá, tendo em vista que o Canadá provavelmente faz parte do NAFTA, vocês provavelmente fazem parte do Pacto do Pacífico e com a Comunidade Europeia. O Brasil poderia usar, o Brasil, não o Canadá, não estou dizendo o Mercosul. Agora eu já foquei no meu país, porque eu, se fosse o Bolsonaro, usaria o Canadá como um ponto do compasso para alcançar o mundo, que ele disse que vai fazer acordos comerciais independente da ideologia. Tá? Então, eu gostaria que o senhor respondesse se tem impedimento legal.
Okay, I'll just translate the question of the gentleman here.
Se você puder responder em português, eu prefiro.
In a nutshell, he's just asking, with the Mercosur countries having problems like Argentina, financially, Venezuela, still being in the Mercosur, but is being taken out, if Brazil could, on its own, do something to be independent and do the bilateral trade. That's basically the question, yeah.
Respondo em português? Pode ser.
I'll translate after in English.
Adorei sua pergunta e provocação. E eu acho que dá muita oportunidade para a gente contar alguma coisa. É difícil responder isso de forma curta. Mas, em relação, eu vou responder de forma muito curta e direta a sua pergunta em relação ao impedimento legal. Hoje em dia, sim, existe um impedimento legal de negociar tarifas. Então, negociação extra-regional de tarifa, você tem que fazer junto com o Mercosul. Por exemplo, ofertas em relação a serviços, compras governamentais, cada um faz o seu. E você pode ter algumas exceções ali dentro para Paraguai, Uruguai, Brasil, Argentina, na composição. Mas nós temos que ir junto com o Mercosul negociar. Hoje em dia. Mas por que na América do Sul a gente tem acordos que são bilaterais ou com o México? Primeiro, porque muitos desses acordos eles estão no âmbito da ALAD, no guarda-chuva da ALAD, que veio antes do Mercosul ser formado. Segundo, no caso do México, houve um acordo quadro, e aí há um precedente interessante que a gente deve utilizar caso a gente entenda que a situação do Mercosul piorou e a gente tenha que negociar sozinho. Mas existe um precedente que é um acordo quadro que nós fizemos com o México, que diz o seguinte: cada país vai negociar bilateralmente com o México. O que aconteceu? O Uruguai negociou um acordo de livre comércio e o México não quis um acordo de livre comércio nem com o Brasil, com a Argentina. Então, isso é um problema. Isso pode ser um problema, porque como é possível com países em desenvolvimento não fazer um acordo de livre comércio, o que não é possível no caso do Canadá, tem que ser um acordo de livre comércio, pode ser um problema. Mas só te fazer um breve histórico, assim, o que aconteceu desde 2010 e até 2018, que a negociação foi lançada, que impediu? Primeiro, nós tínhamos um direcionamento, um entendimento do Mercosul muito diferente do que a gente tem hoje. É um entendimento de que era um bloco político, e eu usaria ele politicamente e não estava interessado em negociar com ninguém. Tanto que quem arrefeceu a negociação não foi nem o Mercosul, foi o Canadá, e ele queria fazer bilateralmente com o Brasil, porque ele viu toda a saída do Paraguai, a entrada da Venezuela, essa coisa toda, e viu, e o governo da Argentina, a gente também tem que lembrar que era um governo muito autárquico, né, que não queria saber de negociação até aquela época, e isso mudou radicalmente, né? E por mais irônico que possa parecer, o único país que defendeu a permanência da Venezuela no Mercosul foi o Uruguai, por questões da mais proximidade esquerda, mas a Venezuela está fora nesse momento, não vai participar da negociação, então ela não tem nenhuma condição de bloquear esse tipo de negociação. Esse é um fato. O outro fato a mudança de governo na Argentina foi radical. A maior inserção da Argentina no mundo é uma plataforma muito importante para o Macri, muito importante, então ele precisa desse tipo de iniciativa. Vai na mesma linha do nosso novo governo eleito. E Paraguai e Uruguai, eles têm muito interesse específico já bem definido, então a negociação para eles é muito mais fácil. Quem tem mais complexidade no tecido industrial é o Brasil e a Argentina, Brasil principalmente a Argentina. Então, assim, fazendo um resumo, sim, hoje em dia há alguma amarra, mas ela pode ser ou pode não ser uma amarra, né? Primeiro, porque nós temos um mercado uma tarifa externa comum no Mercosul que nos ajuda a competir aqui. Segundo, porque nada garante que os países vão querer fechar com o Brasil e vão querer fechar só com o Brasil e não vão querer fechar com os outros, ou vão querer fechar só com os outros. Por exemplo, o caso talvez tenha um país, como exemplo, a União Europeia, blocos, né, que gostariam de fechar com a Argentina, Paraguai, que é mais fácil do que fechar com o Brasil. E aí a gente ficaria sem esse acesso.
Desculpe a interlocução. Um país que está com 150...
Deixa eu traduzir um pouquinho só. So just to translate in a nutshell,
eu falo em português, o senhor passa para o inglês, tá bom?
Deixa eu só traduzir a parte dele. Fabrício has pointed out that basically, legally, we cannot have a bilateral trade, Brazil and Canada. We have to respect our members from Mercosul, and that's very clear. But there is a possibility of eventually having talks if need be. But with the changes we had with Argentina, with the new government and Brazil, there are obviously great opportunities for Mercosul getting together again. And as a Brazilian, I can say that we have to, as diplomats, first take the Mercosul again as a chance and then see what happens later.
Agora, voltando ao nosso assunto, um país que tem o déficit já diz na casa de 150 bilhões, o ano que vem vai ser 130, qualquer pessoa, qualquer comerciante de bar sabe que a saída é exportação. O mercado interno está quebrado. Se o brasileiro fosse um povo econômico que nem o japonês, o Brasil não estava em crise. Por quê? Ele tem um mercado interno monumental, tendo em vista o Canadá está interessado na gente e eu, por exemplo, como marmorista, estou interessado no NAFTA, entendeu? Então, o que acontece? A saída é o Canadá, desde que não tenha impedimento legal em a gente abranger o mundo por 130, valer $1.
Perfeito. Eu, como brasileiro, posso falar também. A gente está, diplomaticamente, a gente tem que aceitar o Mercosul com essa mudança agora, eu acho. Agora, se não der certo, aí a gente toma nossos caminhos. Mas, realmente, o Canadá é uma grande oportunidade para a gente fazer esse exercício de fazer os trades. O Canadá é o país mais organizado e com tendência de como se fazer um Free Trade Agreement, né? Eles estão pensando no direitos humanos, nas patentes, e essa é a nova visão. Você tem que respeitar o que vem de fora, né? E pagar os seus royalties e ter uma jurisdição que segure isso, né? Que tenha um ambiente propício para isso. Eu acho que o Canadá é um país pequeno para nós, mas um grande país para a gente fazer um benchmark de começar essa nova onda de free trade agreements, né? Sim, eu vou passar a palavra para mais alguém que a gente precisa concluir. Alguém mais quer fazer uma perguntinha? E, então, só para reforçar, a gente vai concluir. We'll conclude now our meetings. I was just commenting to the gentleman that as a Brazilian, I do feel that Canada is a great opportunity for us as Brazilians to benchmark how you do free trade agreements globally. Canada is a leader in this, especially in human rights and gender equality and all the rest. A very, very sensible way of approaching countries. And I would just like to point out, Andrea, that the statistics, it's public, it's free, it's there for you to see and use. Same thing online, please. The Canadians there in the Atlantic provinces, you can use that, especially on the Canadian export opportunities. And Andrew will also be available if you need more insight in statistics and ports and all that. And Fabrizio, thank you very much for your Mercosur words. They were very good. Keeps us motivated. Let's get out there. And in Canada and in Brazil, let's fight for this agreement. Let's not be quiet. Let's make our ideas and our suggestions vocalized so that our government and politicians can sit down and get this signed as quick as possible. Thank you very much for everyone. Have a great day. And we'll have a webinar end of February where we have the shipping lines here sitting down with the railways and with the customs brokers and everyone so that we can explain a little about the logistics, how to get to Canada and come from Canada. Thank you very much.